Here's the center point of the feature.
Yep.
We need to take the gauge rod and line it up so that the edge of one of the marks on the rod lines up with the center point.
Right.
And then we can clearly see how much we need to cut the end tile to fit.
Yeah.
If that was much less than half the width of the tile, we might need to think about repositioning the center point. But first of all, we need to check that the other side is also okay. So as you can see, if we line up the marks, the other side is fine.
Right.
So our center point is ideal.
That's really great, but what would happen if we did need to reposition the center point?
Right. If you do need to reposition your center point, then simply you'd line up the gauge rod so that the center point now runs through the midpoint of a tile.
All right.
And as you can see, that gives you a much wider piece to cut from the end.
Yeah.
While we're here, the last thing we need to do now is to mark off on the wall the position of the first hole tile, and that'll be where we start our tiling from.
Right, okay.
We now need to draw a true vertical line to start our tiling from.
Right.
If this center point was in the middle of the wall, we would use a center point and draw the vertical from there. Because it's in the middle of the window feature, we've had to offset the center point, and that's why I made that mark there.
Okay.
So now we put the gauge rod against the mark,
Yeah.
and we'll need a spirit level to make sure that's absolutely vertical. Just move it over a bit. How does that look?
Perfect.
Good. So now you draw a line from the floor.
Here?
Yes, on that side. That goes through our offset center point to about the height that you will be tiling to. Good. We now have the point from which we can start tiling the wall.
I see. So as we're part tiling this wall, we've just drawn the line to about here.
Mm-hmm.
But if we were to do the whole wall, would you draw the line right to the ceiling?
Yes, you would. And now I'll show you how you'll be able to work out how you'll position tiles neatly up and down the wall. Take the gauge rod and hold it in line with the vertical pencil mark, with the end resting on the floor or the skirting board. Make a pencil mark on the wall at the top of the rod across your existing pencil line. Now slide the gauge rod up the vertical pencil line to the ceiling, and if you're very lucky, the pencil mark you just made might line up exactly with the tile mark on the gauge rod, showing that the tiles will fit exactly without cutting. If they do not line up, keep the rod pushed up against the ceiling and look at the tile mark on the gauge rod below your pencil mark on the wall. Halve the distance between them. This will give you some idea of the size of the cut tiles, which will, as ever, look best if they're at least half a tile deep. If they will be narrower than this, then make a new mark on the wall in line with the next tile mark down. Measure the distance between these two pencil marks and make a third mark exactly halfway between them. Write on the wall to show that this is your new positioning mark. Don't worry, you won't see the pencil marks once you've tiled the wall. Now hold your gauge rod so that the end is just clear of the skirting or floor, moving it until one of the tile marks on the rod aligns with the positioning mark. Make a new mark on the wall level with the foot of the rod. This will be the starting point for the first row of hole tiles. Now use the gauge rod and spirit level to draw a level line across the wall at this point. We decided that the top of our tiles would correspond to the top of the basin splashback.
That's right, yeah.
So I've measured that already, and if you hold on to that,
Yeah.
we'll now mark that onto the wall.
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind holding that there, thank you. So it corresponds to There.
Okay.
So that's the top of our tiles, but we need to be certain that still looks good visually.
Okay.
So we'll take the gauge rod and, using the complete tile end of the gauge rod, line it up to find out where the bottom of the last whole tile is going to come. And that should be there. So if you mark that.
Yeah.
And just to check, if you look at that, you'll see that if we line that tile edge mark up, it's just less than a whole tile in length.
Yes.
Which is good for cutting.
Okay.
So that is a good place to start the top of the tiles.
Right.
So now what we need to do is establish a true horizontal along there to use that as a start point for our tiling.
Okay.
So as we did before with the vertical, take our gauge rod and check that it is horizontal.
Okay.
Good. And it's on the mark. So now draw a line against the edge of the
Right.
rod. Good. There's a horizontal and there's a vertical to start tiling the wall from.
Excellent. So can I start tiling along this line now?
Almost, not quite. What we need to do is to support these tiles while the adhesive's setting, otherwise they'll start to slip.
Right.
So what we need to do now is to nail a batten into the wall lined up with our mark. So we'll be nailing this batten to the wall, remembering not to drive the nails all the way in, so it's easier to remove the batten.
Right.
I've already checked the wall for any hidden pipes or cables, which you must always do before you start nailing into walls. So, hold it there for a moment.
Yep.
We simply knock this into the wall. Don't worry about any marks that the nail leaves, because they will be hidden by the tiles.
Of course, yeah.
And remember to just leave some of the nails showing, because that'll be easier to remove the batten.
Yeah.
Yeah. We can now start tiling from there.
Do we put another batten here on this vertical line?
Yes, we do. If you pass me the batten,
Oh.
line it up against the vertical line.
Yep.
Remembering, of course, as ever, that you check for hidden pipes or cable
Yep.
before we start nailing. Okay. And remember, it's always a good idea just to double check to make certain that you're still vertical.
Great. So now we've got the horizontal and the vertical battens in place. Are we ready to start tiling?
Yes. You'll start by fixing whole tiles to the wall until you get to the corner when you're going to have to cut tiles. We call these whole tiles field tiles.
Right.
And it is very quick and straightforward fixing field tiles.
Great.